They say karma has a way of coming full circle, but I never imagined it would arrive dressed in designer heels and a corporate suit. My name is Daniel Ross, and 10 years ago I was a struggling writer living paycheck to paycheck. The woman I loved, Victoria, left me for a wealthy real estate mogul, calling me a dreamer with no future. She humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. But here's the twist. The woman I married 3 years later, she became the most powerful pharmaceutical CEO in the country. And when fate brought Victoria crawling back into our lives, begging for help after losing everything, well, let's just say my wife had her own plans for revenge. This is the story of betrayal, redemption, and the sweetest karma I've ever witnessed. And trust me, you won't believe how this ends. If you love stories about karma and justice, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because this tale has more twists than you can imagine. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was 28 years old and my life was a beautiful mess of ambition and poverty. Every morning started at 4:30 a.m. when my alarm would jolt me awake in my tiny studio apartment. The place was barely 300 square feet, just enough room for a bed, a desk covered in manuscript pages, and a kitchen so small I could touch both walls while standing in the middle. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was where I was writing what I believed would be my breakthrough novel. My first job of the day was at a coffee shop called The Daily Grind, a hipster place downtown where I'd make lattes and cappuccinos for business people who earned more in a day than I made in a month. I'd watch them scroll through their phones, discussing deals and mergers, while I memorized their orders and dreamed about the day when someone would be reading my book on their morning commute. The shift ended at noon, and then I'd rush across town to my second job at Patterson's bookstore, a dusty old shop that smelled like paper and possibility. I'd spend afternoons shelving books, helping customers find the perfect read, and sneaking glances at the fiction section where I imagined my own name would someday appear. At night, after a quick dinner of instant ramen or whatever I could afford, I'd sit at my laptop and write freelance articles about topics I couldn't care less about. 10 ways to organize your closet, or the best budget travel destinations. The work paid just enough to keep the lights on and my laptop running. But every spare moment between these jobs, every lunch break, every quiet hour after midnight, I poured into my novel. It was a romantic thriller about a man who falls in love with a woman who's slowly betraying him, and he has to decide whether to save her or save himself. I didn't know it then, but I was writing my own future. Victoria Bennett came into my life during our sophomore year of college. She was studying marketing and communications, and I was already that guy in the corner of the campus coffee shop, always typing away on some story or poem. She approached me one day, curious about what I was working on. I was nervous. She was stunning, put together, the kind of woman who seemed to have her entire life mapped out. But when I showed her a short story I'd written, her eyes lit up in a way that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy for wanting to be a writer. Our early years together were magical in that way that only young love can be. We were broke college students, but it didn't matter. We'd have picnics on the roof of her apartment building, sharing cheap wine and dreams under the stars. I'd read her chapters of whatever I was working on, and she'd give me feedback, always encouraging, always believing. After graduation, she landed a good job at a marketing firm, and I kept writing while juggling my 3 jobs. She'd come home from work and find me at my desk, surrounded by coffee cups and crumpled paper, and she'd kiss the top of my head and tell me she couldn't wait to see my name on a bestseller list. But her family never approved of me. The Bennetts were country club people, old money types who measured success in property portfolios and golf handicaps. At family dinners, her father would ask me in that condescending tone, "So Daniel, are you still pursuing the writing hobby?" He'd always emphasize the word hobby like it was a disease. Her mother would smile tightly and change the subject, asking Victoria about her career trajectory instead. I could feel their judgment every time I walked into their pristine home in my off-brand jeans and thrift store button-downs. Victoria would defend me at first. She'd squeeze my hand under the table and tell them that I was talented, that I just needed my break. But as the years went on, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and my break never came, something started to shift in her. It was subtle at first, She stopped asking me how the novel was going. When I'd excitedly tell her about a new chapter I'd written, she'd nod absently while checking her phone. Our rooftop picnics turned into her working late at the office, and our weekend adventures became her networking events that I wasn't invited to. By our fourth year together, Victoria had become a rising star at her firm. She was handling major accounts, getting promotions, and rubbing elbows with wealthy clients. Meanwhile, I was still serving coffee, still shelving books, still sending out query letters to literary agents, and collecting rejection after rejection. I had a folder on my laptop labeled Rejections. It had 47 documents in it. 47 different ways of being told that my work wasn't good enough, that my writing didn't fit the market, that they'd have to pass. The arguments started around year 3. Small things at first. She'd complain that we never went anywhere nice. I'd remind her that nice restaurants weren't in our budget, my budget. She made decent money, but she'd started spending it on designer clothes and expensive brunches with her work friends. She'd come home with shopping bags from stores I'd never even walked into, and when I gently suggest that maybe we should be saving that money for our future, she'd snap that she worked hard and deserved to enjoy her success. I started noticing her lying about small things. She'd say she was working late, but when I'd call her office, her colleague would say she'd left hours ago. She'd mention a business dinner, but then I'd see her tagged in Instagram photos at upscale bars with people I didn't recognize. When I'd ask about it, she'd get defensive, accusing me of not trusting her, of being insecure about her success. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was insecure. After all, what did I have to show for 4 years of grinding? An unfinished novel and a collection of rejection letters. Then Blake Morrison entered the picture. She mentioned him casually one evening. Just a new client, she said. Someone who owned half the luxury real estate downtown. He was looking to rebrand his company's image, and Victoria's firm had been hired to handle it. She'd be working closely with him on the campaign. I didn't think much of it at first, but then she started mentioning him more often. Blake said this, Blake thinks that. Blake took the whole team out to this amazing steakhouse. The way her voice changed when she talked about him set off alarm bells in my head, but I pushed them down. I trusted her. We'd been together for 4 years. We talked about marriage, about our future. I finally met Blake at Victoria's office holiday party. I'd been reluctant to go. These events always made me feel like an outsider, standing in the corner while Victoria networked with people who saw me as Victoria's struggling boyfriend. But she'd insisted, said it would mean a lot to her if I came. So I put on my only suit, a navy blue number I'd bought at a consignment shop, and showed up at the fancy hotel ballroom where her company was hosting the event. Blake Morrison was everything I wasn't. Tall, silver-haired, probably in his mid-40s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. He had that confident swagger of someone who'd never worried about money a day in his life. When Victoria introduced us, his handshake was firm to the point of aggressive, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked me up and down in a way that made me feel like a specimen being evaluated and found wanting. "So you're the writer," he said, and the way he said writer made it sound like he was saying unemployed. "Victoria tells me you're working on a novel. That's a nice hobby to have." There was that word again. Hobby. He didn't even try to hide his condescension. Victoria laughed nervously and tried to change the subject. But Blake wasn't done. "You know, I dabbled in writing myself back in college. Poetry, actually. But then I grew up and got a real job." He laughed at his own joke, and some of Victoria's colleagues joined in. I felt my face burning, but I forced a smile and excused myself to get a drink. From across the room, I watched Victoria with Blake for the rest of the night. The way she laughed at his jokes, throwing her head back in that way she used to laugh at mine. The way she touched his arm when she talked to him. The way her whole face lit up when he leaned in to whisper something in her ear. I knew then, standing there with a glass of cheap wine in my hand, that I was losing her. Maybe I'd already lost her. The final blow came 3 months later, on a Tuesday evening in March. I'd been working on my novel obsessively for weeks, barely sleeping, fueled by coffee and desperation. I was so close to finishing it, just a few more chapters. This was it, I thought. This was going to be the thing that changed everything. I'd bound the manuscript myself at a print shop, all 372 pages of it, and I'd picked up flowers from the corner store. I was going to surprise Victoria, show her that I hadn't been wasting my time, that I'd actually done it. I'd finished a novel. I still had a key to her apartment. She'd never asked for it back, despite us spending less and less time together. I let myself in quietly, thinking maybe I'd set up the flowers and manuscript on her kitchen table as a surprise. But I heard voices coming from her bedroom. Her laugh and a deeper male voice I recognized. My stomach dropped. I should have left right then. I should have walked out and saved myself the pain. But I needed to know. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. Victoria and Blake, sitting on her bed in a state of undress that made their relationship crystal clear. There were champagne glasses on the nightstand, expensive-looking bottles that I'd never been able to afford. They both froze when they saw me. Blake didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just smirked and reached for his shirt. But Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: shock, guilt, and then something that made my blood run cold: anger. She was angry at me for interrupting them. "Daniel," she said, pulling a robe around herself, "what are you doing here?" I was still holding the flowers and manuscript like an idiot. "I wanted to surprise you," I managed to say. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. "I finished my novel." Blake actually laughed. He stood up, buttoning his shirt with casual ease, like this was just another day at the office. "Son, maybe it's time to grow up. Writing is for kids with trust funds." He walked past me, squeezing Victoria's shoulder as he left. "I'll call you tomorrow, babe." Babe. He called her babe right in front of me. After he left, there was this terrible silence. I was still standing there in her doorway, and Victoria was sitting on her bed, the bed we used to share, looking at me with something close to pity. That's what broke me, not the cheating, not Blake's condescension, but the pity in her eyes. "How long?" I asked. She sighed like I was being tedious. "Does it matter?" "How long, Victoria?" "6 months," she said finally. "Look, Daniel, I didn't plan for this to happen. But Blake, he can give me things you can't. He's offering me a partnership in his firm, a real future." "We have a future," I said, and even as I said it, I knew how pathetic it sounded. "We've been together for 4 years. We talked about getting married." Victoria stood up, tying her robe tighter. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel. I can't be with someone who has nothing. You're 28 years old and you're still living like a college student. You're still chasing this fantasy of being a writer while the rest of us have moved on to real lives." She gestured at my manuscript, still clutched in my hand. "Another rejection letter waiting to happen? How many times are you going to keep doing this to yourself? To us?" "I thought you believed in me," I said quietly. "I did," she said, and her voice softened just a fraction. "When we were kids in college, I did. But we're adults now, Daniel. When are you going to wake up and get a real job? When are you going to stop being so selfish and think about our future?" "Selfish?" The word came out louder than I intended. "I've been working 3 jobs to pay my bills while writing every spare moment I have. I've been killing myself to make this dream work." "And what do you have to show for it?" she shot back. "A manuscript that'll probably get rejected like all the others?" "I'm tired of being poor, Daniel. I'm tired of cheap dates and staying in on weekends because we can't afford to go anywhere. Blake takes me to 5-star restaurants. He's taking me to Paris next month. He treats me like I deserve to be treated." The flowers fell from my hand. I didn't even feel them drop. "So that's it? 4 years? And you're leaving me for a rich guy?" "I'm leaving you because I want more than you can give me," she said coldly. "I'm leaving you because I'm choosing myself for once. Maybe you should do the same. Choose yourself and realize that writing isn't going to pay the bills." I left the manuscript on her floor, along with the flowers. I didn't want her to have it anymore. I walked out of that apartment and didn't look back, even though I could hear her calling my name. I think she wanted to say something else, maybe soften the blow, but I couldn't hear anymore. I'd heard enough. The worst part wasn't even the breakup itself. It was what came after. Victoria didn't just leave me, she destroyed my reputation. Within a week, everyone in our social circle knew her version of events. She told people I'd been holding her back, that I was unmotivated and refused to get a real job, that I'd been living off her success. She posted cryptic messages on social media about choosing yourself and leveling up and cutting dead weight from your life. Her friends ate it up, commenting with heart emojis and "you go girl" messages. I started getting pitying looks from mutual friends. Some stopped inviting me to gatherings. Others would make awkward small talk about how it's good that you're focusing on yourself, or everything happens for a reason. The worst were the ones who asked if I was finally going to get a real career now. Even people who'd known me for years seemed to buy Victoria's narrative, that I was the problem, the anchor, the dreamer who couldn't face reality. Meanwhile, Victoria and Blake's relationship was everywhere. Social media posts of expensive dinners, weekend getaways to Martha's Vineyard, front row tickets to Broadway shows. She looked happy in every photo, radiant and successful, like leaving me had lifted some terrible burden. They got engaged 6 months after our breakup. 6 months. The ring probably cost more than I'd earned in the entire 4 years we were together. I hit rock bottom hard. For weeks, I couldn't write a single word. I'd sit at my desk, staring at the laptop screen, and feel nothing but emptiness. The novel I'd been so proud of, the one I'd finished for her, sat in a drawer gathering dust. What was the point? Victoria was right. I'd collected 47 rejections. Who was I kidding thinking the 48th query would be any different? I stopped eating properly, lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. My performance at work suffered. The manager at the coffee shop pulled me aside one day and gently suggested I take some time off. I couldn't afford time off, but I appreciated the concern. At the bookstore, my boss Margaret noticed too. She was in her 60s, had owned Patterson's for 30 years, and had a grandmother's intuition for when something was wrong. One slow afternoon, she made me a cup of tea and sat me down in the back office. "Want to talk about it?" she asked simply. I told her everything. The whole pathetic story spilled out. Victoria, Blake, the betrayal, the humiliation, the failures. Margaret listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally and refilling my tea. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You finished the novel?" she finally asked. I nodded. "Yeah, lot of good it did me." "Where is it now?" "In a drawer. I can't even look at it anymore." Margaret leaned forward, her expression serious. "Daniel, listen to me. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's success. Prove her wrong, not for her sake, but for yours. You finished a novel. Do you know how many people say they're going to write a book and never get past chapter 3? You did the work. Don't let her take that away from you too." Something in her words broke through the fog. She was right. Victoria had taken my heart, my self-esteem, my social circle, but she couldn't take my work unless I let her. That night, I pulled the manuscript out of the drawer and started editing again. I wish I could say it was easy after that, but it wasn't. Writing while heartbroken is like trying to run with broken legs. Every word hurts. Every sentence feels like a betrayal to your own pain. But I pushed through. I worked doubles at the coffee shop and bookstore, and I wrote through the nights. My novel became my therapy, my escape, my middle finger to everyone who'd written me off. I sent out more queries. The rejections kept coming. Number 48, 49, 50. But on number 53, something changed. An agent named Patricia Williams responded not with a form rejection, but with an actual email. She'd read my sample chapters and wanted to see the full manuscript. I must have read her email 20 times before I believed it was real. Patricia loved the book. She said the emotion in it was raw and real, that readers would connect with the main character's vulnerability. 2 months later, she'd sold it to a mid-sized publisher called Redwood Press. The advance was modest, $25,000, but to me it might as well have been $1 million. I quit one of my jobs and moved to a slightly better apartment, one with actual separate rooms and a window that got sunlight. The book came out 18 months after Victoria left me. There was no big marketing push, no book tour, just a quiet release into a crowded market. But the reviews were good. Readers connected with it in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't a bestseller, but it sold steadily, and more importantly, it proved something to myself. I could do this. I wasn't a failure. I met Isabel Crawford at one of my book signing events. It was at a small, independent bookstore in Brooklyn, and maybe 15 people showed up. I was grateful for every single one of them. Isabel was near the back, and I noticed her because she actually seemed engaged with what I was saying, nodding and taking notes while I talked about the writing process. Afterward, while I was signing books, she approached with a warm smile. She was beautiful in an understated way. None of Victoria's flashy designer clothes or perfectly styled hair, just natural elegance and kind eyes. She told me she'd read the book twice already and had driven an hour to make it to the signing. The way you wrote about heartbreak, she said softly, it felt so honest, like you'd really lived it. I did, I admitted before I could stop myself. We ended up talking for an hour after everyone else had left. The bookstore owner finally had to kick us out so they could close. Isabel suggested we continue the conversation over coffee, and we walked to a little cafe nearby that was still open. That's when I learned she wasn't just a reader. She was Dr. Isabel Crawford, a pharmaceutical researcher working on making life-saving medications more affordable. She told me about growing up poor in rural Pennsylvania, the daughter of a single mother who worked two jobs to keep food on the table. She'd watched her mother ration insulin because they couldn't afford the full prescription. That experience had driven her to pursue medical research, to eventually earn her PhD, and to dedicate her career to solving the affordability crisis in medicine. She'd worked her way up from lab assistant to research director through sheer determination and brilliance. We talked about dreams and perseverance, about the cost of ambition and the value of staying true to yourself. Isabel didn't care that I wasn't rich or that I'd only published one book. She cared about the words I'd written, the stories I wanted to tell, the person I was trying to become. That night, sitting in that cafe with this incredible woman, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years: hope. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully. We were both people who'd been burned before, who'd learned that real connection is built on substance, not superficial attraction. Isabel would come to my readings and I'd visit her at her lab. We'd spend evenings in my small apartment, her reading research papers while I worked on my second novel, just comfortable being together. She read everything I wrote and gave thoughtful feedback, but unlike Victoria, she never made me feel like I had to prove my worth. 2 years into our relationship, my second novel came out. It performed better than the first, made a few bestseller lists, got some nice reviews. I was making a living as a writer finally, though not a lavish one. But Isabel didn't care about money. She made a good salary as a research director, but lived modestly, putting most of her income toward her mother's care and her own research projects. I proposed to her at Patterson's bookstore, the place where she'd encouraged me to keep going when I wanted to give up. Margaret helped me set it up. I waited until Isabel came in for our regular Saturday morning browsing session. Then I had Margaret lead her to the fiction section. I'd arranged books on the shelf to spell out, "Will you marry me?" It was simple, probably cheesy, but it was us. Isabel said yes before I even finished getting down on one knee. We had a small wedding at a botanical garden, just close friends and family. My old college buddy James was my best man. Margaret from the bookstore came. Isabel's mother was there, healthy thanks to the affordable insulin program Isabel's research had helped develop. Victoria wasn't invited, obviously, but I didn't even think about her that day. I was too busy marrying the love of my life. The next 3 years were the happiest of my life. I published my third novel, which became a genuine bestseller. A movie studio optioned it, and suddenly I had the kind of financial security I'd only dreamed about. But more important than the money was the validation. I'd proven everyone wrong. I'd proven Victoria wrong. I hadn't given up on my dream, and my dream had paid off. Meanwhile, Isabel's career exploded. Her research into affordable insulin production got national attention. A major pharmaceutical company, Meridian Pharmaceuticals, recruited her to lead their development division. Within 18 months, she'd revolutionized their approach to drug pricing and accessibility. The company's stock value tripled under her leadership, and the board promoted her to CEO. At 35 years old, Isabel Crawford became one of the youngest female CEOs in the pharmaceutical industry. Forbes did a feature on her. Fortune named her one of their 40 under 40. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile with the headline, "The CEO Who Put Patients Before Profits." Isabel handled it all with the same grace and humility she approached everything. She still drove the same modest car, still lived in our comfortable but not extravagant home, still made time for quiet evenings, reading and talking about our days. We became what the media called a power couple, though we never felt that way. To us, we were just Daniel and Isabel, two people who'd found each other and supported each other's dreams. We attended charity galas and industry events together, yes, but we were just as happy staying home with takeout and a movie. Success hadn't changed us. It had just given us the resources to help others the way people had helped us. I heard about Victoria through the grapevine before I saw her again. Old mutual friends, the ones who hadn't completely cut me off, would occasionally mention her in passing. At first, the news was good from her perspective. She and Blake had gotten married in some lavish ceremony in the Hamptons. They'd bought a mansion in Connecticut. She'd made partner at Blake's firm. Everything looked perfect on the surface. But then the cracks started to show. Blake's real estate empire had been built on risky investments and questionable business practices. When the market shifted, properties he'd over-leveraged started going into foreclosure. It wasn't a dramatic collapse at first, just a slow hemorrhaging of assets. But then federal investigators started looking into some of his deals. Tax evasion, fraud, misrepresentation to investors, the kind of charges that don't just mean financial ruin, but potential prison time. I heard that Victoria lost her job when the scandal broke. Her firm didn't want the association with Blake's company. The social circle she'd valued so much turned on her just as quickly as they'd embraced her. Suddenly, she was the wife of an accused criminal, a pariah in the same communities where she'd once been celebrated. Blake's legal team worked out a plea deal that kept him out of prison, but cost him everything else. In the divorce settlement, he managed to protect what little remained of his assets, leaving Victoria with essentially nothing. The mansion was seized. The cars, the jewelry, the designer wardrobe, all of it liquidated to pay debts and legal fees. Victoria, who'd left me because I couldn't give her a luxurious lifestyle, found herself broke and unemployed at 36, moving back into her parents' modest retirement home. The same parents who'd looked down on me for being poor. The irony wasn't lost on me when I heard, but hearing about it secondhand was different from seeing it with my own eyes. That happened at a pharmaceutical industry gala 5 years after Victoria had left me. Isabel was receiving an innovation award for her work in affordable drug development. It was a black tie event at a luxury hotel ballroom, the kind of place where everyone was dressed in designer gowns and tuxedos, where champagne flowed freely and the attendees represented billions of dollars in collective wealth. I was there as Isabel's husband, her plus one, wearing a custom-tailored tuxedo that fit perfectly. We were mingling with other executives and industry leaders, Isabel gracefully accepting congratulations on her award. I was proud of her, watching her command the room with her intelligence and warmth. She belonged here not because of money or connections, but because she'd earned it through genuine achievement. That's when I saw the catering staff circulating with hors d'oeuvres, and one of them looked familiar. She was wearing the standard server uniform, black pants, white shirt, black vest, and carrying a tray of appetizers. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she'd aged in a way that made her look older than her 36 years. But I recognized her immediately. Victoria. My heart stopped. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. But no, it was definitely her. Victoria Bennett, the woman who'd left me because I wasn't successful enough, was now serving canapes to the very people who'd once been her peers. The universe has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. She hadn't seen me yet. She was focused on her job, weaving through the crowd with her tray, offering appetizers to guests who barely glanced at her. I watched her for a few minutes, processing the shock. Isabel noticed my distraction and followed my gaze. "Daniel? You okay?" she asked quietly. "That's her," I said. "That's Victoria." Isabel's eyes sharpened. She'd heard all about Victoria, of course. I'd told her the whole story early in our relationship. She studied Victoria for a moment, then looked back at me. "What are you thinking?" "I don't know," I admitted. I never thought I'd see her like this." We didn't approach her that night. What would I have said? But Victoria's break ended eventually, and she stepped outside to the terrace where some guests were getting fresh air. I'd followed, not entirely sure why. Maybe morbid curiosity, maybe closure, maybe just fate. She was alone, leaning against the railing and looking out at the city lights. She looked exhausted, defeated in a way that the old Victoria never would have allowed herself to appear in public. I approached slowly, and when I spoke, my voice came out softer than I expected. Victoria. She spun around, and the recognition hit her face like a physical blow. Her eyes went wide, then filled with something that looked like shame. Daniel, she breathed. What are you doing here? My wife is receiving an award tonight, I said simply. Your wife? She processed this information, and I saw her putting pieces together. You're married to Isabel Crawford, the CEO, the one getting the Innovation Award. Yeah. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Finally, Victoria let out a long breath. I suppose you're enjoying this. Seeing me like this. Was I? I'd imagined this moment so many times in those dark months after she left. The moment when she'd realize she'd made a mistake. When karma would finally catch up with her. But standing here now, looking at this shell of the woman who'd once destroyed me, I felt something unexpected. Not joy, not even satisfaction. Just a strange, hollow sadness. How did this happen? I asked. Victoria laughed bitterly. How do you think? Blake's business collapsed. He got indicted for fraud, lost everything in legal fees and settlements. Then he divorced me to protect what little he had left. And suddenly the marketing executive with the powerful husband became unemployable. Nobody wants to hire the ex-wife of a convicted fraudster. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Are you? She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I wouldn't be. I wouldn't blame you for laughing in my face right now. I'm not going to do that. Why not? I deserve it. Her voice cracked. Daniel, I was so cruel to you. I said terrible things. I humiliated you in front of everyone we knew. I told you you'd never amount to anything. And look at you now. Look at me. She took a shaky breath and continued. I know I have no right to ask you anything. I know what I did to you was unforgivable. But I'm desperate. I've been unemployed for 2 years. I have a master's degree in marketing, and I'm serving appetizers at corporate events. I heard you married Isabel Crawford. Everyone in the pharmaceutical industry knows her name. Please, Daniel, I need a job. Any job. I'll take anything. I'm begging you. There it was, the moment I'd fantasized about in my darkest hours. Victoria, the woman who'd called me worthless, begging me for help. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. I'll talk to Isabel, I heard myself say. I can't promise anything, but I'll ask her. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. God, thank you. Here's my number. She scribbled it on a cocktail napkin with a pen from her server apron, her hands shaking. I know I don't deserve your kindness. I know that. But thank you. I took the napkin and went back inside, finding Isabel by the bar. She saw my expression and immediately knew something had happened. We found a quiet corner, and I told her about the conversation. Isabel listened carefully, her face unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. So this is the woman who told you you'd never amount to anything? The one who called you worthless and humiliated you in front of everyone you knew? Yeah. The one who broke your heart and left you questioning your entire worth as a human being? That's her. Isabel's eyes flashed with something I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but cold calculation. Give her my office number. Tell her to call Monday morning. I was surprised. You're going to help her? I'm going to give her exactly what she deserves, Isabel said, and there was something in her tone that made me shiver. Trust me, Daniel. Victoria called Isabel's office first thing Monday morning. I wasn't there for the conversation, but Isabel told me about it later. She'd been professional and cordial, asked Victoria about her background and qualifications. Victoria had been desperate to impress, over-explaining her credentials, mentioning her connection to Isabel's husband in a way that made Isabel smile coldly. At the end of the interview, Isabel offered Victoria a job, but it wasn't the marketing or management position Victoria had hoped for. It was an entry-level administrative assistant role in the compliance department. The salary was barely above minimum wage for someone with Victoria's education and experience. The work would be tedious. Data entry, filing, basic administrative tasks. Long hours in a windowless cubicle with no prestige and no path to advancement. Isabel told me that she watched Victoria's face fall when she outlined the position, but Victoria was desperate enough to take it. "When can I start?" she'd ask quietly. Over the next few months, I started to understand Isabel's plan. This wasn't kindness. It was calculated justice. Every day, Victoria would arrive at Meridian Pharmaceuticals headquarters and walk past the massive portrait of Isabel in the lobby, the CEO who had everything Victoria had once wanted. She'd work in her windowless cubicle while Isabel had a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She'd see Isabel's name on company newsletters and emails, read about her achievements and innovations. Victoria's co-workers didn't know about her past. To them, she was just another entry-level employee struggling to keep up with the boring, repetitive work. Meanwhile, company-wide emails would announce Isabel's latest accomplishments. The company newsletter would feature photos of Isabel and me at charity events, at book launches, at industry galas. There was a bookstore in the building's lobby that prominently displayed my novels. Victoria would see them every day on her lunch break. Isabel made sure Victoria was assigned to compile quarterly reports about company success, reports that detailed exactly how well Meridian was performing under Isabel's leadership. She'd sit in mandatory all-hands meetings where Isabel would present her vision for the company's future, her plans for expansion and innovation. Every single day was a reminder of what Victoria had thrown away. I asked Isabel once if she felt guilty about it. We were having dinner at home, and she just told me about assigning Victoria to organize files for a presentation about our recent appearance on a morning news show. Isabel set down her fork and looked at me seriously. "Do you remember what you were like when I met you, Daniel? You were broken. You questioned your own worth every single day. You thought maybe Victoria was right, that you were just a delusional dreamer wasting your life. It took you years to rebuild your confidence." "I remember," I said quietly. "She didn't just break up with you. She tried to destroy you. She told everyone you knew that you were worthless, that you were holding her back. She made you feel like nothing." Isabel's voice was steady but intense. "I'm not torturing her, Daniel. I'm teaching her a lesson she should have learned a long time ago. That success isn't about what you can take from other people. It's about what you build with your own hands." She was right, of course, but watching it unfold still felt surreal. Victoria would show up to work every day at 7 a.m. and leave at 6 p.m., exhausted from mind-numbing tasks that someone with her qualifications should have been able to do in her sleep. But Isabel made sure she was always slightly overwhelmed, always just barely keeping up. Never quite failing, but never succeeding either. Just existing in a gray zone of mediocrity. 6 months into Victoria's employment, something changed. I noticed it first in the way she carried herself when I'd occasionally see her in the building. The desperation had faded, replaced by something harder. She'd stopped wearing makeup, stopped trying to dress up her work uniform with accessories. She just came in, did her work, and left. There was a resignation to her that was almost peaceful. Then one day, she requested a meeting with Isabel. I only knew about it because Isabel told me that evening. She seemed amused but also curious. "Victoria asked to see me," Isabel said as we were getting ready for bed. "Personally requested time on my calendar." "What do you think she wants?" "I don't know, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow." The next afternoon, Victoria showed up at Isabel's office. Isabel had her assistant leave them alone. Victoria stood in front of Isabel's massive desk, the kind of desk that screamed power and success, and for a long moment, she just looked around the office, the awards on the walls, the photos of Isabel and me at various events, the view of the city skyline. "You're torturing me on purpose, aren't you?" Victoria finally said. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired and flat. Isabel leaned back in her leather chair. "Sit down, Victoria." "I'd rather stand." "Suit yourself." Isabel folded her hands on her desk. "You wanted to see me? I just need to know if there's an end to this. You gave me this degrading job to humiliate me. You're punishing me for what I did to Daniel 10 years ago. I get it. I understand. But is there any path forward, or are you just going to keep me in that cubicle until I quit?" Isabel was quiet for a moment, studying Victoria. Then she stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "You're absolutely right, Victoria. This is exactly what you deserve. Victoria flinched but didn't respond. Isabel turned back to her. 10 years ago, you told my husband he was worthless because he wasn't rich. You humiliated him publicly for following his dreams. You left him broken and questioning his worth as a human being. Do you remember what you said to him? Yes, Victoria whispered. Tell me. I want to hear it from you. Victoria's voice was barely audible. I told him he had nothing, that he was selfish for pursuing writing, that he needed to grow up and get a real job. I asked him when he was going to stop being a failure. You called his life's work a fantasy, Isabel continued. You measured his worth entirely by his bank account. You valued money over character, status over substance. And when you left him, you didn't just break up with him, you tried to destroy his reputation. You told everyone he was the problem, that he was holding you back. I know what I did, Victoria's voice broke. I know I was awful. I was shallow and cruel, and I've paid for it every day since. Have you? Isabel's voice was sharp. Have you really learned anything, Victoria? Or are you just upset because you lost the lifestyle you thought you deserved? I lost everything. Victoria's composure finally cracked. My husband, my career, my home, my reputation. I went from living in a mansion to sleeping in my childhood bedroom. I lost all my friends. I couldn't get a job anywhere because of Blake's scandal. I've been humiliated and desperate and broke for years. If that's not paying for my mistakes, I don't know what is. That's not karma for what you did to Daniel, Isabel said coldly. That's just the natural consequence of marrying a criminal for his money. You didn't lose everything because you were cruel to my husband. You lost everything because you built your life on a foundation of greed and shortcuts. Victoria sank into the chair, finally looking defeated. So what do you want from me? How long does this punishment last? Isabel walked back to her desk and sat down. I didn't give you this job out of kindness, Victoria. I gave it to you so you could understand what rock bottom really feels like. You wanted a life of luxury without earning it. You thought marrying rich was the same as being successful? Now you're earning every penny and it's still not enough, is it? No, Victoria admitted. It's not. Good. Because success isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be earned through hard work, integrity, and perseverance. 3 things you knew nothing about when you left Daniel. Isabel's expression softened just slightly. But I'm not a monster, Victoria. I'm giving you a choice. Victoria looked up, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time. Option 1, Isabel said. Keep this job. Show up every day. Do the work. Be grateful you have employment at all. Stop complaining. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. And actually try to be good at something instead of looking for the easy way out. Maybe eventually, if you prove you've actually learned something, there might be room for advancement. But that's a maybe, and it'll take years. And option 2? Walk out that door right now. Quit. But know that I have connections throughout this industry, Victoria. I sit on boards. I have relationships with CEOs at every major pharmaceutical and biotech company in this country. If you walk out, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. Not the Blake Morrison scandal. That's not your fault. But your character, your values, the way you treat people when they can't do anything for you. Victoria stared at her. That's not a choice. That's blackmail. No, Isabel said firmly. It's accountability, something you've managed to avoid your entire life. You thought you could jump from man to man, job to job, using people as stepping stones without consequences. I'm showing you that actions have consequences. So either I stay in this humiliating job or I'm blacklisted from the entire industry. Or, Isabel said, and her voice softened again, you could try something radical. You could actually work hard. You could stop looking at this job as beneath you and start seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild yourself from the ground up. You could prove that you're more than just an opportunist looking for her next meal ticket. The room was silent for a long moment. Victoria sat there, tears streaming down her face, probably going through every option in her head. Finally, she spoke. I'll stay. Good. Isabel pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. Then starting Monday, you're going to be working on a new project. Still entry level, still compliance department, but with slightly more responsibility. You'll be auditing our charitable giving programs, making sure donations are going where they're supposed to go. It's detail-oriented work, and it matters. If you do it well, we'll talk about next steps in 6 months. Victoria wiped her eyes. Why are you doing this? If you hate me so much, why not just fire me? Because Daniel wouldn't want me to, Isabel said simply. Despite everything you did to him, he's not a cruel person. When he saw you at that gala, serving appetizers, he felt sorry for you. That's the kind of man he is. So I'm giving you what he would want, a chance. Not an easy one, but a chance. Victoria stood up slowly. Can I ask you something? What? Does he hate me? Isabel considered the question. No, I think he pities you, which is probably worse. After Victoria left, Isabel told me she felt strange. Not guilty exactly, but not triumphant either. She'd expected to feel satisfied, having confronted the woman who'd hurt me so badly. Instead, she just felt tired. Did I go too far? She asked me that night. I thought about it carefully. You gave her a job when no one else would. You're paying her a living wage. You're giving her a path forward if she's willing to work for it. That's more than she deserved. But I'm also making her suffer every day. She made me suffer every day for months, I reminded her. And she did it for no reason, except that I wasn't rich enough for her. You're doing this to teach her a lesson. There's a difference. Isabel nodded, but I could tell she was still processing it. My wife had a strong moral compass, and even justified revenge didn't sit entirely comfortably with her. That's one of the things I loved about her. She always questioned herself, always tried to do the right thing, even when it was complicated. The months that followed were interesting to watch from a distance. Victoria kept her head down and did her work. According to Isabel's reports, she was actually good at it. Meticulous, thorough, never cutting corners. The audit work Isabel had assigned her revealed some minor discrepancies in the charitable giving program that Victoria documented and fixed. She started coming in earlier and staying later, not because anyone asked her to, but because she seemed to take pride in doing the work well. Isabel noticed the change too. She's actually trying, she told me one evening, sounding almost surprised. Not just going through the motions, but genuinely working hard. Maybe she's finally learning, I suggested. Around the 9-month mark, something unexpected happened. Victoria requested another meeting with Isabel, but this time it was through proper channels. An email asking for 15 minutes of her time to discuss a compliance issue she discovered. Isabel was intrigued and approved the meeting. Victoria came prepared with a full report. She'd found a pattern in vendor payments that suggested possible kickbacks, nothing involving Isabel or her direct team, but lower-level managers who'd been with the company for years. The documentation was thorough, the analysis was sharp, and the conclusions were sound. This was the Victoria from her marketing days, the competent professional who'd once been good at her job, before she'd gotten distracted by wealth and status. This is excellent work, Isabel said, genuinely impressed. She'd had her own compliance team verify Victoria's findings, and everything checked out. You potentially saved the company millions and protected us from serious legal liability. Victoria didn't smile or celebrate. She just nodded. It's my job. It's beyond your job description, Isabel corrected. You didn't have to dig this deep. You could have just done the surface-level audit and called it done. I wanted to do it right, Victoria said simply. Isabel studied her for a moment. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I'm not looking for shortcuts. I'm not trying to impress anyone or climb over anyone. I'm just trying to be good at something because it matters to be good at things. Victoria met Isabel's eyes. You were right about all of it. I spent my whole life looking for the easy way up, and I never actually built anything real. This job, this terrible entry-level, boring job, is the first thing I've done in years that I can actually be proud of. Something shifted in Isabel's expression. She opened a drawer and pulled out another folder. I was going to wait another 3 months, but I think you're ready now. There's an opening in our pharmaceutical safety department. It's a junior analyst position, still not management, still not glamorous, but it's a step up, and it's real work that matters. Interested? Victoria's eyes widened. Yes, absolutely yes. The pay increase is modest. You'll still be working long hours and you'll be under scrutiny. If you mess up, you're gone. No second chances. I understand. One more thing, Isabel said. If you take this position, you'll occasionally have to present findings in meetings that I attend. You'll have to work with my executive team. That means seeing me regularly, being reminded of who I am and who my husband is. Can you handle that? Victoria was quiet for a moment. It'll be hard. Every day in this building is hard. But yes, I can handle it. Why? Isabel asked. Why put yourself through this when you could find work somewhere else by now? Your connection to Blake's scandal is old news. You could probably get a job at a smaller firm. Because I deserve to be uncomfortable, Victoria said. I deserve to wake up every day and be reminded of what I threw away and what I destroyed. Not as punishment, I've had enough of that, but as a reminder to never be that person again. Does that make sense? For the first time since this whole thing started, Isabel smiled at Victoria. Not warmly, but with something like respect. It does. You start the new position Monday. A year after Victoria started working at Meridian, I saw her for the first time since that night on the gala terrace. I'd stopped by Isabel's office to take her to lunch, and we ran into Victoria in the lobby. She looked different, still worn, still showing the signs of everything she'd been through. But there was something steadier about her, less desperate. Daniel, she said, stopping when she saw me. Hi. Hi, Victoria. There was an awkward pause. Isabel watched us both carefully. I never properly apologized to you, Victoria said quietly. I apologized to Isabel when she gave me this job, but I never said it to you directly. So I'm saying it now. I'm sorry for everything, for how I treated you, for what I said, for the way I tried to destroy your reputation. You didn't deserve any of it. You were a good person who loved me, and I was too shallow and stupid to see what that was worth. I took a breath. I'd imagined hearing those words so many times in the first year after she left. Back then, I'd wanted her to grovel, to suffer, to feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. But now, standing here with Isabel's hand in mine, having built a life I was proud of, the apology didn't give me the satisfaction I'd once thought it would. It just felt like something that needed to be said so we could all move forward. I appreciate that, I said, and I forgive you. Victoria looked surprised, like she hadn't expected forgiveness to come that easily. You do? Yeah, not because you earned it, necessarily, but because holding on to anger was eating me alive for a long time. Letting it go was the best thing I ever did for myself. I squeezed Isabel's hand. Plus, things worked out pretty well for me. So in a weird way, you leaving me was the best thing that ever happened. Victoria's laugh was sad but genuine. I'm glad. Really, you both deserve all the success you have. And Daniel, your books are really good. I've read all of them. Thank you. I should get back to work, Victoria said. But thank you for forgiving me. And Isabel, thank you for giving me a chance when no one else would. After she walked away, Isabel turned to me. You okay? Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I really am. Over the next 2 years, Victoria continued to work her way up at Meridian. Not quickly and not easily, but steadily. She proved herself in the pharmaceutical safety department, catching potential issues before they became problems. She was promoted to senior analyst, then to a junior management position. She'd never reached the executive level. Her past and her connection to Isabel and me made that impossible, but she built a respectable career doing meaningful work. Isabel told me that Victoria had started volunteering at a women's shelter in her spare time, helping women who'd been financially dependent on abusive partners learn job skills and rebuild their lives. There was a poetry to that. Victoria, who'd left me for money and ended up with nothing, now helping other women find their own independence. We'd occasionally see her at company events. She'd always nod politely but keep her distance, respecting the boundaries that needed to exist. She dated occasionally, Isabel heard, but nothing serious. She'd moved out of her parents' house into a small apartment she could afford on her salary. She drove a used Toyota and packed her lunches. She'd built a quiet, modest life, and for the first time, it seemed like she was at peace with it. 3 years after Victoria had confronted Isabel in her office, she requested one final meeting. This time it was personal, not professional. She came to Isabel's office with an envelope in her hand. I'm resigning, she said, setting the envelope on Isabel's desk. Not because I'm unhappy or because I found something better, but because I think it's time. Time for what? Isabel asked. Time to stop punishing myself, Victoria said. I've spent 5 years working here, being reminded every single day of my mistakes and what I lost. And that was important. I needed it. But I'm not that person anymore. And staying here feels like I'm defining myself by my worst moment forever. What will you do? I've been offered a position at a nonprofit that works on pharmaceutical accessibility in rural communities. It's a pay cut from what I make here, but it's meaningful work. And it'll be a fresh start, somewhere where nobody knows my history with you and Daniel. Isabel stood and walked around her desk. She extended her hand to Victoria. I think that's a good decision. For what it's worth, you've done good work here. You've proven you're capable of growth. Victoria shook her hand, and I could see tears in her eyes. Thank you. Not just for the job, but for everything. You could have destroyed me completely. You had every right to. But instead, you gave me a chance to become someone better. I won't forget that. After Victoria's last day at Meridian, Isabel came home and found me in my office, working on my sixth novel. She leaned against the doorframe and watched me type for a moment. Victoria's gone, she said. I saved my work and turned to her. How do you feel about it? Honestly, relieved. It was exhausting having her there. Even after I stopped actively punishing her, just knowing she was in the building was a constant reminder of everything that happened to you before we met. Do you think she really changed? I asked. Isabel thought about it. I think she learned some hard lessons. Whether she's truly different or just learned to hide her worst qualities better, I don't know. But I hope for her sake that she did change. Living with yourself when you know you're a terrible person, that's its own kind of hell. You're a good person, you know that? I said, pulling her into my arms. I'm not sure about that. I was pretty cruel to her. You gave her exactly what she needed. Not what she wanted, but what she needed. There's a difference. Now, sitting here years later, I can look back on the whole experience with clarity I didn't have while living through it. Victoria's betrayal nearly destroyed me. For months, I questioned everything. My talent, my choices, my worth as a human being. She took someone who was struggling but hopeful and tried to crush him completely. That kind of damage doesn't heal quickly or easily. But meeting Isabel, falling in love with someone who valued character over wealth, who supported my dreams instead of mocking them, it saved me. Not just professionally, though, her support certainly helped my writing career. But emotionally, spiritually, she reminded me that my worth wasn't determined by my bank account or my success or anyone else's opinion of me. I was valuable simply because I was a good person trying to do good work in the world. And Isabel's handling of Victoria, while unconventional, taught me something important about justice and karma. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's not about making them hurt the way they hurt you. Real justice is about accountability, about making someone understand the full weight of their actions and giving them the opportunity to become better. That's what Isabel did. She didn't ruin Victoria. She rebuilt her, one humbling day at a time. Could Isabel have just forgiven Victoria immediately and given her a good job? Maybe. Would that have been kinder? In the short term, yes. But would Victoria have learned anything? Would she have really changed? I don't think so. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them experience the consequences of their choices. Not out of cruelty, but out of genuine hope that they'll grow from it. As for me, I kept writing. My seventh novel came out last year and hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. The movie adaptation of my third book finally got made and did well at the box office. I'm not a household name, but I make a comfortable living doing what I love. More importantly, I've stayed true to the values that got me here. Hard work, persistence, and believing in myself even when others didn't. Isabel and I have 2 kids now, a daughter who just turned 5 and a son who's 3. We're teaching them about kindness and boundaries, about supporting people's dreams, and knowing their own worth. We tell them that success isn't about money or status. It's about being proud of who you see in the mirror, about building something meaningful with your life, and about treating people with dignity even when they can't do anything for you. Sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if Victoria hadn't left me. If we'd stayed together, if she'd kept believing in me, if she'd been by my side when I finally found success. Would I be happier? Would we have lasted? I honestly don't know. But I do know that I wouldn't have Isabel, wouldn't have my kids, wouldn't have learned the lessons I needed to learn about self-worth and resilience. Victoria did me a favor by leaving, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. She showed me who she really was, someone who valued wealth over character, status over substance, luxury over love. And in doing so, she freed me to find someone who valued all the things that actually matter. The irony is that by leaving me for being poor, she ensured that when I did become successful, I'd be with someone who loved me for who I was, not what I had. As for Victoria, I genuinely hope she's doing well in her new job. I hope she found some peace and built a life she's proud of. Not because she deserves my forgiveness or my goodwill. She probably doesn't. But because holding on to bitterness was poisoning me, and letting it go set me free. She taught me what I don't want in a partner, what red flags to watch for, what values truly matter. Those are painful lessons, but valuable ones. The story people want to hear is that Victoria's downfall was immediate and complete, that karma struck her down the moment she betrayed me. But life isn't that neat. Karma isn't a lightning bolt. It's a slow-moving river that eventually reaches everyone. Victoria got her comeuppance, but it took years and it came in forms she never expected. Not just the loss of her marriage and career, but the loss of her sense of self. The realization that she'd built her entire identity on sand. And the real revenge? It wasn't seeing her serve appetizers at a gala or watching her struggle in an entry-level job. It was building a life so full of love and purpose and genuine success that when I saw her again, I felt nothing but pity. She couldn't hurt me anymore because I'd become someone she had no power over. That's the ultimate revenge, becoming so complete in yourself that your betrayer becomes irrelevant. If you're watching this because you've been betrayed, because someone told you you'd never amount to anything, because someone left you for superficial reasons, I want you to know something. It's not about you. Their cruelty, their shallowness, their inability to see your worth, that's a reflection of them, not you. Your job isn't to prove them wrong. Your job is to prove yourself right, to keep showing up, keep working, keep believing in your own value even when the world tells you you're worthless. Success isn't the best revenge. Becoming someone you're proud of is. Building a life that reflects your values is. Finding people who love you for who you are, not what you can give them, is. Everything else, the money, the recognition, the vindication, that's just a bonus. The real victory is looking in the mirror and liking who you see, regardless of what your betrayer thinks of you now. And sometimes, if you're lucky, karma does its job. Not in a dramatic movie-style climax, but in the quiet unraveling of a life built on false values. Victoria wanted wealth and status more than she wanted love and integrity. She got exactly what she chased, and then she lost it all, because you can't build a lasting life on such a shallow foundation. Meanwhile, I wanted to write, to create, to find real love. I got exactly what I chased, and it lasted because I built it on things that matter. So if this story of karma and justice resonated with you, if you've ever felt like giving up on your dreams because someone told you they weren't worth pursuing, I want you to do something for me. Hit that like button and leave a comment telling me about your own experience with karma. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who later regretted it? Have you ever proved someone wrong by succeeding despite their lack of faith? Share your stories. I read every comment, and your experiences might help someone else who's going through what we went through. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's been made to feel worthless or who's questioning their dreams because of someone else's cruelty, share this video with them. Sometimes people need to know they're not alone, that other people have walked this path and come out stronger on the other side. Subscribe for more stories about real-life karma, about resilience, about what happens when people get exactly what they deserve. Because the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales, even when it takes longer than we'd like. Remember, never let anyone make you feel worthless for chasing your dreams. The right person will lift you up, not tear you down. The right person will celebrate your ambitions, not mock them. The right person will support you through the struggling years, not abandon you for someone richer. And if someone can't do those things, then they're not the right person, no matter how much you love them. My name is Daniel Ross, and this is my story. It's not a fairy tale where everything worked out perfectly. It's a real story about real pain, real growth, and real justice. Victoria betrayed me when I had nothing. Isabel loved me for who I was, and when Victoria came back into our lives broken and desperate, Isabel gave her exactly what she deserved. Not destruction, but accountability. That's the real lesson here. Karma isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. It's about the universe making sure that what you put out into the world comes back to you, one way or another. Victoria put out cruelty and superficiality, and that's what she got back. I put out persistence and integrity, and that's what I got back. The math always works out eventually. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by anyone else's opinion of you. It's determined by what you build, who you become, and how you treat people when they can't do anything for you. Everything else is just noise. See you in the next one.